How does someone go from NFL superstardom to a prison cell? From signing a $40 million contract to being found dead in a prison bunk? From playing in front of millions to being remembered as a convicted murderer? Aaron Hernandez wasn't just any football player. He was a phenomenon, a natural athlete with the kind of raw talent that made coaches, fans, and analysts believe he was destined for greatness. But what no one knew, what no one saw, was that behind the fame, behind the million-dollar endorsements, behind the bright stadium lights, there was something much darker, a life filled with secrets, a past filled with violence, and a future that would come to a shocking, tragic end. June 26, 2013. It's early morning in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. A black SUV pulls up in front of a massive, stone-covered mansion. Inside, security cameras capture a man pacing. He knows what's about to happen. The moment he's been dreading is here. A knock at the door. Police officers stand outside, waiting. Slowly, the door opens. He steps out. His expression is cold, unreadable. He doesn't fight. He doesn't argue. He doesn't even speak. Moments later, he's led away in handcuffs, shirtless, expressionless, head down. Cameras flash. Reporters scramble. One of the NFL's most promising stars is under arrest for murder. Just a year earlier, he was catching touchdown passes from Tom Brady in the AFC Championship game. Just months before, he was celebrating the birth of his daughter. His life should have been set. Money, family, success. So how did it all go so wrong? At first, the public thought it was a one-time mistake, a crime of passion, a bad decision that cost him everything. But the deeper investigators looked, the more they uncovered. Aaron Hernandez wasn't just an athlete who got caught up in a single act of violence. He was a man living a double life, a man with ties to dangerous people, a man accused of not one, but multiple murders. The truth was darker than anyone could have imagined. And the more the world learned, the more disturbing it became. Did football turn him into this? Was it the violent hits, the repeated concussions, the brutal world of the NFL that changed him? Or was this who he had always been? A man capable of horrific violence, who just happened to be gifted at football? By the time the full story came out, it was already too late. Aaron Hernandez was gone, dead in his prison cell at just 27 years old. But the mystery didn't end there. His final moments, his last letters, his shocking autopsy report, all of it left more questions than answers. This isn't just a story about crime. It's a story about power, about talent wasted, about how a man with everything to lose threw it all away. This is the story of Aaron Hernandez. Before we get into the chilling details of this story, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Crime Scene for more real-life stories that will leave you speechless. Bristol, Connecticut. A quiet town known for its small-town charm and deep-rooted sports culture. It's here that Aaron Joseph Hernandez was born on November 6, 1989, into a family that lived and breathed football. His father, Dennis Hernandez, was a former high school star, a man who believed discipline and toughness made champions, and he expected nothing less from his sons. Aaron idolized his father. Dennis was strict, sometimes harsh, but always present. He pushed Aaron to be great, drilled into him that success on the field was all that mattered. And for a while it worked. Aaron was a standout athlete, a natural on the field, faster, stronger, and more determined than the kids around him. But inside that home, behind closed doors, life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. Dennis Hernandez wasn't just a demanding father, he was controlling, a man who ruled with an iron fist. Those close to the family say he could be violent, quick to anger, quick to discipline. And while the world saw him as a devoted dad and respected figure in the community, inside the home, the pressure was relentless. Aaron loved him, feared him, and wanted more than anything to make him proud. But then, everything changed. January 6, 2006. Aaron was just 16 years old when his father suddenly died from complications after routine hernia surgery. The man who had shaped his entire world was gone overnight. And from that moment on, something inside Aaron changed. Friends and family noticed it. His attitude shifted, his emotions became unstable, and most of all, his anger grew. Without his father's discipline, without that strict guidance, Aaron started slipping into a different life, one that had nothing to do with football. But if there was one thing Aaron knew how to do, it was play football. And in high school, he wasn't just good, he was unstoppable. A record-breaking tight end for Bristol Central, he dominated games, putting up numbers that had colleges across the country taking notice. At just 17, he was already one of the top recruits in the nation. The University of Connecticut wanted him. His older brother DJ played there. But Aaron had his sights set on something bigger. The Florida Gators, Urban Meyer, national championships, a chance to play alongside Tim Tebow and cement his name among the greats. So he left home early, skipping his senior year of high school and heading straight to Gainesville. And that's when things really started to change. At Florida, Aaron Hernandez was a star. On the field, he was everything scouts expected and more. Agile, fast, nearly impossible to defend. He helped lead the Gators to a national championship, catching passes from Tebow, solidifying himself as one of the best young tight ends in the country. But off the field, a different story was unfolding. He was drinking, a lot, smoking weed constantly, skipping classes, getting into fights. And then the rumors started. Whispers of something more dangerous than just partying. Something violent. It was September 30th, 2007, a night out at a nightclub called The Venue. An argument. Two men shot in their car as they left. One hit in the head, the other in the arm. Witnesses described the shooter as a Hispanic male with a muscular build, tattoos, and a Florida Gators jersey. Aaron Hernandez was questioned, but no charges were ever filed. The case went cold, and just like that, he was back on the field, playing as if nothing had happened. But the signs were there, the violent tendencies, the growing paranoia, the way he carried himself, like someone who had seen things, done things, and wasn't afraid of what came next. By the time the 2010 NFL draft came around, Aaron Hernandez should have been a first-round pick. His talent was undeniable, but teams were nervous. The whispers about his past, the failed drug tests, the attitude problems. NFL executives weren't sure if they were looking at the next great tight end or a player destined for trouble. So he fell. Team after team passed on him until the fourth round. Pick 113, the New England Patriots took a chance. Bill Belichick saw something in him. Tom Brady needed a weapon, and Hernandez, he had something to prove. The second he stepped onto the field in New England, everything changed. The reckless college kid became a focused professional. He was explosive, dynamic, a perfect fit for the Patriots offense. He and Rob Gronkowski formed one of the most dangerous tight end duos the league had ever seen. The touchdowns came, the wins piled up. He was living the dream. The past? That was behind him, or so it seemed. In 2012, the Patriots rewarded him with a $40 million contract extension. He had money, a mansion, a fiancée, a newborn daughter. To the outside world, he had it all. But behind closed doors, the warning signs were still there. He was obsessed with guns. He carried them everywhere, even in places he didn't need to. He was paranoid, constantly looking over his shoulder, convinced that someone was out to get him. He surrounded himself with the wrong people, old friends from his past, men with criminal records, men who lived by a different set of rules. Teammates noticed the change. He wasn't the fun-loving guy they thought he was. He was quick to anger, unpredictable, distant. He had everything to lose, yet he acted like he had nothing to lose at all. And then, in 2013, everything came crashing down. By 2012, Aaron Hernandez had everything most people could only dream of. A $40 million contract, a fiancée, a newborn daughter, a sprawling mansion in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. He was young, rich, and at the peak of his NFL career. But off the field, the image of a hard-working athlete and family man was nothing more than a mask. Behind the scenes, Hernandez was spiraling. He wasn't just reckless, he was dangerous. And it didn't take long for the cracks in his double life to start showing. It started as a night out at Cure Lounge, a nightclub in Boston's theater district. Hernandez arrived with a small group, looking relaxed, blending into the crowd like any other athlete blowing off steam. But something changed that night. Something small, Something most people wouldn't have noticed. A brief argument, a spilled drink, a moment of perceived disrespect. And for Aaron Hernandez, that was enough. Two men, Daniel Diabro and Safiro Furtado, left the club around 2 a.m., driving through the city in their BMW. They never made it home. A car pulled up beside them at a red light. Shots rang out. 5 rounds tore through the vehicle. When police arrived, they found Diabro and Furtado slumped in their seats dead. Their 3 passengers survived, but none of them could identify the shooter. The case went cold. No witnesses, no motive, no suspects. For months, it was just another unsolved murder in Boston. But years later, detectives would uncover a shocking link, one that led straight to Aaron Hernandez. In the months following that night, something in Hernandez changed. He became more cautious, more erratic, more paranoid. The carefree NFL star started acting like a man on the run, constantly looking over his shoulder, convinced that someone was watching him. He refused to go anywhere without security, even in places where he was among friends. He installed an elaborate security system around his mansion. Surveillance cameras covered every entrance inside and out. He rarely slept in the same room twice, always moving, always unpredictable. And he carried a gun, everywhere. Even in the Patriots' locker room, where teammates would later recall him slipping a firearm into his gym bag before heading home. But his paranoia wasn't just about the outside world. It extended to the people closest to him. He started questioning his own friends, accusing them of talking behind his back, of knowing too much. If he even suspected someone of betraying him, they were cut off, or worse. The violence wasn't just limited to strangers. Those around him saw glimpses of it too. Former teammates described him as unpredictable. One moment, he was laughing and joking, and the next he could snap, fists clenched, rage boiling beneath the surface. There was an incident with Wes Welker, one of the Patriots' top receivers. Hernandez was late for a meeting, and when Welker called him out, Hernandez responded with a cold, unsettling stare. No words, just silence. Teammates brushed it off, but some remembered it as the first time they realized he wasn't like the others. Then there was the night in Miami with his friend, Alexander Bradley. Bradley had been Hernandez's right-hand man for years, his closest confidant, his personal fixer, but even he wasn't safe. February 13th, 2013, a quiet stretch of road in Riviera Beach, Florida, the sound of a single gunshot, a body left for dead. Alexander Bradley was found bleeding from the face, shot in the eye. He survived, but barely, and he knew exactly who had pulled the trigger. But instead of going to the police, Bradley kept quiet. He knew the rules. He knew what happened to people who talked. And so, he disappeared, until months later, when the world would learn exactly how far Hernandez was willing to go to protect his secrets. For Aaron Hernandez, the violence wasn't just an accident. It wasn't a moment of lost control. It was a way of life. And in the summer of 2013, it would finally catch up to him. By June 2013, Aaron Hernandez was still living the life of an NFL star, or at least that's how it seemed on the surface. He had just finished his 3rd season with the New England Patriots. He had money, fame, and a promising career ahead of him. But underneath it all, his paranoia was growing. And the violent world he tried to keep separate from his football career was closing in on him. And then, on a quiet summer night in North Attleboro, everything came crashing down. Who was Odin Lloyd? Odin Lloyd wasn't a stranger to Aaron Hernandez. In fact, he was practically family. He was dating Shania Jenkins, the sister of Hernandez's fiancée, Shayana Jenkins. Through their connection, Lloyd had become part of Hernandez's circle, attending parties and spending time at his mansion. But unlike the NFL superstar, Lloyd wasn't rich. He wasn't famous. He was a 27-year-old semi-pro football player who worked hard, kept a small circle, and stayed out of trouble. At least until the night he made a fatal mistake. That mistake, saying something Hernandez didn't like. It's still unclear exactly what triggered Hernandez's rage, but witnesses say something happened at a club in Boston just days before the murder. Lloyd had been out with Hernandez and his friends, and at some point, he said something that made Hernandez suspicious. Maybe it was about the double homicide in 2012. Maybe it was about his lifestyle, but whatever it was, Hernandez decided Lloyd couldn't be trusted. June 16th, 2013, a little after 2:30 a.m. Odin Lloyd is at home in Dorchester, Massachusetts. His phone buzzes. It's a message from Aaron Hernandez. A black Nissan Altima, rented in Hernandez's name, pulls up outside his house. Lloyd steps out, climbs in, and the car drives off into the night. He doesn't know it yet, but he won't be coming back. For the next 30 minutes, Lloyd's phone sends out messages. First to his sister, just small talk, nothing unusual. But then, at 3:22 a.m., one final text. "You saw who I'm with." Then another one that would later become crucial evidence in the case. NFL. That was the last message Odin Lloyd would ever send. Minutes later, gunshots shattered the silence in an industrial park just a mile from Hernandez's mansion. Multiple rounds fired at close range, a body left in the dirt, the black Nissan Altima speeding away into the night. Hours later, a jogger made the grisly discovery. Odin Lloyd's body lay face down in a gravel pit, riddled with bullets. 5 shots, 1 to the back, 2 to the chest, 2 to the side. His phone was still in his pocket, his keys and wallet untouched. This wasn't a robbery, this was an execution. Police arrived quickly, but there were no immediate suspects, no witnesses, no weapon left behind. But when they checked Lloyd's phone, one of his last messages pointed them in a clear direction. NFL. Who else could that mean? And then there was the car, the black Nissan Altima seen leaving the area. A rental. And when police checked the paperwork, they found only one name on the agreement: Aaron Hernandez. Detectives wasted no time piecing the case together, and it didn't take long before Hernandez's carefully controlled world started to fall apart. Hernandez had installed dozens of security cameras at his mansion. That system was meant to protect him, but it would be the thing that sealed his fate. Just hours after the murder, footage showed Hernandez walking through his house, holding what appeared to be a Glock pistol. His demeanor, calm, as if nothing had happened. Phone records showed Hernandez had been in contact with Lloyd throughout the night, organizing the late-night meetup. And then, silence. The messages stopped just minutes before the gunshots were heard. The Nissan Altima wasn't just linked to Hernandez. It was returned the next day with a key piece of evidence inside: shell casings, and they matched the bullets used in the murder. At this point, investigators knew they had their suspect, but they needed one last thing: an arrest. June 26th, 2013. Less than 10 days after the murder, the world watched as Aaron Hernandez, former Patriots tight end, once a rising star in the NFL, was led out of his mansion in handcuffs. It was early morning, and the cameras were already rolling. The footage was played on every news network. Hernandez in a white t-shirt and basketball shorts, his hands cuffed behind his back. No emotion on his face, no resistance, just a blank stare as officers placed him in the back of a police cruiser. In a matter of seconds, his life had changed forever. The Patriots wasted no time. Less than 2 hours after his arrest, they cut him from the team. A franchise that had once given him a $40 million contract was now erasing him from their history. The media exploded. The headlines were everywhere. A Super Bowl contender, a millionaire athlete, now facing a murder charge. But what no one knew then was that this was just the beginning. Because as the investigation continued, police would uncover something even darker, something that went beyond Odin Lloyd, a past filled with violence, a history of secret crimes, and a case that would shock the world. Aaron Hernandez had once been the face of an NFL dynasty, a young star with a $40 million contract, a mansion, and a seemingly perfect life. But by 2015, his fate was no longer in his hands. He wasn't stepping onto the field at Gillette Stadium. He was stepping into a courtroom where his freedom and his future hung in the balance. January 29th, 2015, Bristol County Superior Court. Cameras flashed, reporters filled the seats, and the world watched as Aaron Hernandez stood before a judge and pleaded not guilty to the murder of Odin Lloyd. He wore a dark suit, looking nothing like the man who once celebrated touchdowns in front of thousands of screaming fans. His lawyers were ready to fight, but the prosecution had a case built on hard evidence, and they were ready to dismantle the life Hernandez had carefully constructed. The prosecutors wasted no time laying out their argument. They painted Hernandez as a man living a double life, an NFL superstar by day, a violent, paranoid man by night, and then they introduced the evidence. They revealed the last messages Odin Lloyd sent before his death, messages that placed him in the car with Hernandez moments before he was killed. Security cameras inside Hernandez's home showed him returning just minutes after the murder, holding what appeared to be the murder weapon. Prosecutors argued that this was no coincidence. This was a man trying to cover his tracks. The black Nissan Altima, rented in Hernandez's name, was captured on security cameras near the murder scene. Inside, investigators had found shell casings matching the bullets used to kill Lloyd. The connection was undeniable. But then came one of the most shocking pieces of evidence, one that would raise more questions than answers. Cheyenne Jenkins, the fiancée's role. Cheyenne Jenkins, Hernandez's longtime fiancée and the mother of his child, was called to the stand. And what she said, or rather, what she didn't say, only deepened the mystery. Prosecutors accused her of helping Hernandez dispose of a key piece of evidence, the murder weapon. Surveillance footage from their home showed her carrying a mysterious black bag out of the house just one day after the murder. She placed it in the trunk of her sister's car and drove off. The bag was never seen again. And when she was asked about it in court, "I don't remember." Again and again, she answered questions with the same phrase. She claimed she had no idea what was in the bag, no idea where it went, no idea about anything. And despite the overwhelming evidence against Hernandez, she never wavered in her loyalty. The prosecution pushed hard. They wanted the jury to see Hernandez for who they believed he really was, a man willing to kill over the smallest slight, a man who thought he was untouchable, a man who had done this before. Just as the trial for Odin Lloyd's murder was unfolding, another bombshell dropped. Prosecutors in Boston had officially charged Aaron Hernandez with 2 additional murders, a case that had gone cold for nearly 3 years. It was July 16, 2012. 2 men, Daniel Diabro and Safiro Furtado, were leaving a nightclub in Boston. A car pulled up beside them at a stoplight. Shots rang out. Both men were killed instantly. The shooter? Witnesses said it was a heavily tattooed man in a silver SUV. The case had gone unsolved for years until one man came forward. Alexander Bradley, a former close friend of Hernandez, claimed he had been in the car that night. He told police that Hernandez had become enraged over a spilled drink inside the club. A minor incident, but to Hernandez it was a reason to kill. Hours later, he allegedly pulled the trigger, ending 2 lives over something so trivial. The 2012 case now loomed over Hernandez as he sat in court for the Odin Lloyd trial. And while he wasn't on trial for those murders yet, the prosecution made sure the jury knew. This wasn't just one murder. This was a pattern. April 15, 2015. After 7 weeks of testimony and deliberations that lasted over 35 hours, the jury returned with their decision. Aaron Hernandez stood expressionless as the verdict was read. Guilty of first-degree murder. A gasp spread through the courtroom. Hernandez showed no emotion, no reaction, as the sentence was handed down. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. A man who had once had everything was now condemned to spend the rest of his days behind bars. Cheyenne Jenkins sobbed quietly. Hernandez's mother lowered her head, and outside the sports world reacted in shock. A former NFL star, a Super Bowl contender, now a convicted murderer. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. After being sentenced to life, Hernandez still faced another trial, the case for the 2012 Boston double murders. This time, the outcome was different. On April 14, 2017, after 6 weeks of testimony, the jury reached their decision. Not guilty. Hernandez was acquitted. His defense had successfully argued that Alexander Bradley, the prosecution's star witness, had fabricated the story to save himself. For the first time in years, Hernandez had a small victory, but just days later, that victory would mean nothing. April 19, 2017. Just 5 days after his acquittal, Aaron Hernandez was found hanging in his prison cell at the Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, a bed sheet wrapped tightly around his neck. His body was discovered just after 3 a.m. By the time guards arrived, it was too late. Next to him, 3 handwritten letters, one for his fiancée, one for his daughter, and one for his attorney. He had also drawn symbols on the wall in blood. One of them was the all-seeing eye, often associated with the Illuminati. Another was the word John 3:16. Questions swirled. Was it guilt? Fear? Something more? His fiancée later revealed shocking details, rumors that Hernandez had been struggling with his sexuality, that he had been leading a secret life, and that he feared how the truth would affect his image. There were also reports that he had formed a relationship with another inmate. Had the weight of these secrets finally broken him, or was there something darker at play? His family demanded answers. Some claim foul play. Others pointed to CTE, the brain disease linked to repeated head trauma. An autopsy later confirmed that Hernandez had one of the most severe cases of CTE ever recorded in an NFL player. His brain had deteriorated. His impulse control was damaged. Did football play a role in his downfall? One thing was certain. Aaron Hernandez had gone from the heights of the NFL to the depths of the prison system, from a Super Bowl to a life sentence, from fame to infamy, and in the end, he left behind more questions than answers. Aaron Hernandez had once been a man who thrived under pressure, who lived for the roar of the crowd, the thrill of competition. But in his final days, the cheers had long faded. The only noise left was the sound of prison doors locking behind him. And in the early hours of April 19, 2017, Aaron Hernandez made his final, irreversible decision. By 2017, Hernandez had spent nearly 4 years behind bars. He was no longer the charismatic, cocky NFL star with $1 million smile. Those who saw him in prison noticed a change. His mood swung between moments of intense focus and erratic outbursts. He was jittery, paranoid. Guards noticed him pacing his cell late at night, muttering to himself. He had always been distrustful, but now it seemed like he was at war with something inside his own mind. Then there were the writings, pages of them. His cell was covered in religious messages, quotes from the Bible, cryptic notes scrawled on scraps of paper. He had never been deeply religious before, but now he spoke about God constantly. He told his fellow inmates he had found peace. He said everything was part of a bigger plan. But was he at peace, or was he preparing for something? On the evening of April 18th, Hernandez seemed oddly cheerful. He called his fiancée, Shayana Jenkins, for what would be their final conversation. He laughed, he joked. He told her to stay strong, that everything would be okay. He spoke to his young daughter and told her he loved her. And then, just before hanging up, he said something strange, something that wouldn't make sense until hours later. "You're going to be rich." Then at 8 p.m., he watched his final television program, the movie John Q., a film about a desperate father willing to do anything for his child. Was this intentional? Was he leaving a message? No one knew. At 10 p.m., he returned to his cell. He placed his Bible open to John 3:16, one of the most famous verses in Christianity. "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life." He took red ink and scrawled John 3:16 across his forehead. Then he took 3 letters and placed them neatly beside his Bible. One for his fiancée, one for his daughter, one for his attorney. Each contained his final words. At 3 a.m., the prison was quiet. Guards walked past his cell during routine checks. Everything appeared normal. But just an hour later, that would change. At 4:07 a.m., prison officers at Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center found Aaron Hernandez unresponsive in his cell. He had used a bedsheet to hang himself from the window bars. His skin was cold, his body was motionless, and his lips were still curled into the faintest smile. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, but it was too late. Hernandez was pronounced dead. The man who once dominated the football field, who had millions of dollars, who had a family and a future, was now just another inmate found dead in his cell.